And there's the police singing their epic track, Walking on the Moon. And the reason we are playing that is because overnight we heard the sad news that Michael Collins died. And for those of you who don't know who Michael Collins was, he was the man in the command module that circled the moon while Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong went down to the surface and became the first men or people to walk on that moon. Joining us now, we have Haritina Mogosanu, and she's a space scientist, an astrobiologist. You can't get more equipped to talk about the moon than Haritina. So welcome to the show, Haritina.
Thank you, Steve. It's an honor for me to be here.
Now, I think I got your name right, Haritina Mogosanu.
That was perfect pronunciation.
Excellent. That's a good start to the interview. You are from Romania originally. How did you end up here?
Well, I'm a Kiwi now as well, but I came here in 2005 to see the star called Canopus, which is the second brightest star in the sky, and it's on board every spacecraft that goes out there. So I first read that is on board of the Hubble Space Telescope, so I wanted to see that navigator star. It turns out all spacecraft have it and navigate by it, and you can only see it from 23 degrees north, so you have to go lower than that latitude to be able to see it. But I thought I chose New Zealand also because it has amazing seas.
Yeah, and so that's how you ended up here. And did you do some study while you were here? Were you finishing off a degree, or did you do a masterate or a PhD?
I did, yeah. So my background is in biology, and I've always wanted to be an astronomer, and it didn't happen as I planned. It happened as it happened. And when I came here to New Zealand, I worked for a while for the Ministry for Primary Industries, where I was very lucky to do biosecurity. And then I was very lucky to have an internship at NASA to do biosecurity in space, which is planetary protection. And part of that, I did a degree thesis that was part of my master's in international security. And I studied why we didn't go back to the moon.
Well, we're about to talk about Michael Collins, but let's deal with that. They are planning to go back in the next few years, but why did we not go back to the moon? We haven't had anyone on that. I was going to say it's not a planet, of course, it's a moon. We haven't had anyone up there since, was it 1970, 71, the last time man walked there?
Yeah, well, it's a very good question. Why didn't we go back to the moon? And well, it took me more than a year of researching and going through documents and understanding what was happening. And it's, I found out all these amazing, interesting things. For instance, everybody thinks that President Kennedy was behind the space race, and everybody knows his speech about going to the moon. And it wasn't. He wasn't. He was not into space at all. The person who really was behind all these was President Johnson, Lyndon B. Johnson. He was the one who really liked space. He was the one who came to say to the people in the president's team at the time that it would be a good idea to put someone on the moon because, for various reasons, one of them that it would look really good. And we talked about this just before, about people going to the moon, and now Michael Collins died, and Buzz Aldrin is the only one left alive, and it was all, at the time, a political game, and that political game to be better than the Russians. And, I have to say I grew up in the communist bloc. I grew up behind the Iron Curtain. I know how it felt to be in that kind of environment. But what the Americans did and what the Western, the free world did was absolutely phenomenal. It was just, even though the reasons maybe weren't good enough, right? So it was part of the war and part of the Cold War. Even that wasn't the right thing. What happened afterwards completely changed the world. And one of the things that changed the world so much was just seeing the picture of Earth from the moon. There were a lot of pictures taken of the Earth from space, but the pictures that were taken from behind the moon, that was what really brought the blue marble into human consciousness. And now we're very lucky that we have TV and we have all the media that is happening. And I was just watching an interview with these, astronauts that went behind the moon, and they were saying that one of them didn't even want to take a camera and says, "I'm really sorry. I should have, I'm admitting when I'm wrong." He says, "I was wrong not to want to take a camera," but he did, and he came back with all these amazing photographs. So that created a shift in the way we see the Earth. That photograph, that picture, and that work that later Carl Sagan did with his pale blue dot, and he really built on all that, and just bringing this awareness of how there are no borders on Earth from space, and how fragile we are. And that was at the beginning, that marked the beginning of all this environmental movement that we have today.
Yeah, because I was going to say, despite the fact that over the 50 years it really cemented into our consciousness that this was home, this is all we've got, it's a small dot in a vast universe, we haven't treated the planet particularly well in the intervening 50 years.
We don't know, a lot of people talk about, we mistreating Earth, and it's true, we have, and there are a lot of people who understand communication. So I'm a space science communicator. That's what I do. I'm talking to people, and I'm getting them excited about life on Earth, and astrobiology is about life in the universe and how life is formed, but also it's about the future of humankind. And I had this opportunity to think about these things. Like, this is what I do for a job. I think about Earth, and I think about space, and I think about human race, and what are we going to do in the future, and how come that we are here and we're not taking care of Earth, and this is very silly because we should, because we only have one Earth. But people don't know. So I think our duty is to go out there and tell people what we have, and make sure, it's really easy for me to say this because this is what I do all day long, but most people have a 9-to-5 job. They have to provide food. They have to, deal with their children, pick them up from school, do homework, whatever you do, cook, all these mundane things that take over, take care of their farms, everything that is happening. So then it just slips away. So if you do not have a perspective, if you don't have someone who's telling you about these things over and over and over again, I think it's very easy to forget. And that's why I think science communicators and us, we're here to tell people, look, okay, we have global warming, which is really bad. We have all these terrible things that are happening to the planet. We have wars, which is really terrible. But we know, because we have seen how Earth looks from space. We know there is something else beyond, all the things that we do. We know what we need to do. So I think humankind now has the opportunity to grow, and we are here to support this with pictures, photographs, with what we know, what we learned about Earth. So, I kind of like in the last few years, after I've done all my research, I realized that, it's easy to be harsh on people, but what have we done to explain this? What have we done to educate people? What have we done to make people understand that we only have one Earth and extinction is forever? And, so I think what we need to observe from now on is what we're doing from now on, what kind of information we're putting out there.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned, of course, that the United States were the first ones to put man on the moon, but there you were living in the Soviet bloc, which had got the first Sputnik up there, the first satellite, first dog in space, and first man in space, Yuri Gagarin. So the Russians were doing pretty well, which is what galvanized the Americans. And let's talk about Michael Collins. So he was on that command module going round the moon as his two companions went down onto the surface. And at the time, and I think maybe still, was had the record for being the most distant human from any other human in human history. So tell us a little bit about Michael Collins.
He was one of my heroes, and I actually have a book that he wrote, and I'm ashamed to say that I haven't had the chance to sit down and just go through it properly. I've got his biography in my library at home, and now that he's gone, probably I'll go and read more about him. but he was a very unassuming person, and I remember watching this interview with him where he said to the interviewers, "We didn't have enough poetry. We just said, oh, we're go for lunar insertion," and then the people who were there, they were like, "Oh yeah, okay, we have lunar insertion," but we didn't have anything that was nice and beautiful and poetic to say. And he was on a stage, and the presenter said, "Okay, here's your other chance to make it up, to insert a little bit of poetry." And he said, it's on the internet, it's on YouTube, but what he said was, "You have the moon," or something, which I thought was fantastic.
Mind you, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind is a good little bit of poetry. Yeah,
it is. But I think, I actually quite like that. It was everything they did was very efficient. So while he was talking about not enough poetry, I thought that was actually very, very funny how they were all very, very efficient. So, I think he was a very good communicator, and the way he did all his interviews after that and talked about the moon. He's one of the people who talked about the blue marble, as that I was saying. Carl Sagan took over and built on it, but he was one of those people who were really, really good at explaining what is happening and what is it that we're doing here. And he was a director of the National Air and Space Museum, where he did a lot of background work on communicating about what was happening in there.
Haritina, you mentioned that National Space Museum in Washington there, this part of the Smithsonian Institute, one of my all-time favourite places. I've been there twice and spent full days in there. Oh, what a stunning place.
Lucky you.
Have you not been there?
No.
Oh, well, put it on your bucket list.
So tell us, what was your favourite thing?
Well, you could see the capsules. They were there. You could touch them. They were behind plastic, but you could look into them. That the astronauts had come back to Earth from the moon. You could touch a piece of moon rock that was there for anyone to be able to run their finger across. There was the Wright brothers plane was in there. So it was fascinating. Hey, we've completely got sidetracked, but we have talked about Michael Collins, and we need to finish now. But you sound good fun, and you're a science communicator, so I think I'll keep your phone number, and we'll have a chat to you every now and then about what's happening up there in the heavens above us. Because let's remember, out here in rural communities, we've got terrific dark skies.
Absolutely, and if anybody wants to touch a piece of the moon here in New Zealand, we actually have one here at Space Place at Carter Observatory in Wellington. If you ever come here, we do have a piece of the moon for the public to have a look at and touch.
Fantastic. We'll leave it there. Haritina Mogosanu, thank you very much for your time. We do appreciate it. And Haritina is a space scientist and astrobiologist. Thanks, Haritina.
Thank you, mate.
And there's the police singing their epic track, Walking on the Moon. And the reason we are playing that is because overnight we heard the sad news that Michael Collins died. And for those of you who don't know who Michael Collins was, he was the man in the command module that circled the moon while Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong went down to the surface and became the first men